while we have some incredible Pokemon picks that made it into our top cut here, we have some incredible Pokemon trainers as well. And our first top 16 matchup of the day is going to be two former regional champions from last year, in addition to their myriad of other accomplishments. Toler, Webb versus Riley Factura.
It's kind of funny. This is what passes for like a standard matchup in this format where we have Flamigo versus Primarina.
Yes, the way that the cards have dealt. I believe there are actually 7 Flamigo who made day 2. I'm not sure how many of those converted into top cut, but I do believe Riley Factura is one of the only beat-up Annihilate that we've seen in the competition, and I think the person who's made it this far, or the most far with that Pokemon. But first, let's take a moment to look at Toler's team, as while you may be familiar with it, I think we saw a few people running this archetype on stream the other day. It's a really unique combination of Trick Room with Porygon 2 and Ursaluna. This is the normal Ursaluna with Flame Orb and the Guts ability to boost its attack. You have Amoonguss as a great Trick Room supporting Pokemon, being able to redirect, being able to put Pokemon to sleep with Spore. And then you have Goldengo, Incineroar, and Flamigo really to put some faster pressure on the opposing side of the field.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Toler make it to this point in the tournament with Flamigo. We were talking a little bit after the tournament yesterday. They kind of all wondering, the group of folks that he's working with, if they had revealed Flamigo was very good a little too soon. But seems like it is worked out just fine for everybody. And, props to them, right? Where, Flamigo, a Pokemon I had previously known mostly for being very effective at Pokemon speedrunning, also being used to speedrun this tournament.
It really has. And what's fascinating to me as well is that it honestly took this long. I mean, Goldengo has been very popular as a Pokemon ever since its introduction, for sure. Fantastic typing, fantastic coverage, but Flamigo as an adaptation to that Pokemon certainly is new. Toler is not new to the Pokemon circuit, though. I mean, we have his most recent accomplishments, but it's kind of a mix of older and recent accomplishments. The one that was kicked off the bottom of the list is he was the 2012 Seniors World Champion back in Hawaii, second time we were there. Most recently, though, placed top 64 at the Honolulu World Championships back in August.
Yeah, it's like, hey, world champion's pretty good. Usually that makes it out there. But yeah, I mean, he's been very good for a long time. Really nice guy. Excited to see him. Always kind of has like a little fun quirk to the team. Not someone who plays something, but you saw on Twitter the day before.
His opponent, Riley Factura, really needs no introduction if you've been watching the streams at all in the past year. Is going to be running a Fire, Water, Grass team with Rillaboom, Incineroar, Primarina. Will have his own Goldengo with Nasty Plot and Life Orb to provide some boosting support. And then, of course, the fabulous duo of Whimsicott and Annihilate. Now, we have seen these two Pokemon together in the Scarlet and Violet tournaments in the past, but really not a lot of appearances of them this weekend, at least on stream.
Yeah, and maybe this could work out pretty well for Riley here, where I think the Annihilate combination in particular is kind of fun, where it's just something you have to keep in your mind the whole game. Whenever Annihilate's out in the field, you got to position in such a way that you're not allowing it to get snowballed, either through you attacking it inefficiently and building up Rage Fist, or through Whimsicott doing its cheese. And I think if Riley had a lower third, it could probably be man who hates inaccurate moves. Kind of one of his shticks
yes.
is that he does everything he can to have only attacks with 100% accuracy in his team. I think it's one of the reasons why perhaps he didn't do quite as well in the previous format, where it was a little more difficult to do that. But this is another format where, much like the beginning of last season, it's a little bit easier to have those consistency sort of Pokemon, where this time, Riley able to have a team that kind of fits his usual qualifications while all still being top of the meta Pokemon.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I called out the Fire, Water, Grass core here, because between Incineroar, Primarina, and Rillaboom, you can find some really nice switches where you can take a Pokemon onto the field that would resist a super effective attack that's incoming into that slot. And I do think that if your goal is consistency, which, let's be real, 5-time regional champion, getting top 4 at LAIC last year and top 32 at Worlds this past year, if that's your goal, having those tools, having those consistent forms of play, even when the Pokemon change, even when maybe the individual strategies change, helps those skills carry forward in the format.
Yeah, I think, kind of both sides, they've more conservative teams in the sense they can switch around, they can play balance. Like we've got a Porygon 2, like the Trick Room oriented balance, and then more of a Tailwind oriented balance for Riley. But both players very able to play the conventional Pokemon, right? Again, I think a lot of players have found this format to be very refreshing, where it's more traditional gameplay. You can take a few hits, you can move around a little bit, you can kind of play a little more chess, right? Where the last format, I think, it tended to be more about making a decisive play early in a game, and we could have a very evenly matched matchup here, where both trainers having great tools to just kind of grind it out.
So as we take a look at both these trainers and as they get into team preview, that does make me wonder what the approach is going to be for both of them. Because on paper, you know, looking at Riley's team, a very easy lead for game one could be Whimsicott and Annihilate, whereas for Toler, a very easy lead for game one could be Fake Out plus Trick Room, or maybe Redirection plus Trick Room. But given their experience, I don't think that's necessarily what we'll see. I feel like you do try to read a little bit deeper when you are playing an opponent with this much caliber.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where they're both, you know, 4 or 5 ways down that I think he's going to think, but I think he's going to. I guess one of the nice things too about especially like Toler's side of the field is that, you know, the Pokemon are so bulky that you don't like need to commit to like the really aggressive setup. But you do have to lead in such a way that you're not just allowing Annihilate in particular to get rolling easily. I was going to say, I think we're almost certainly going to see Flamigo, where almost all of the Pokemon that it's sort of designed to beat are on this team, though it's not going to enjoy immediately leading off against this Incineroar.
It is not going to enjoy it, but its scrappy ability does mean it will not be intimidated by the opposing Incineroar. Annihilate will be that partner Pokemon, and then for Toler, it's the Golden Go alongside the Flamigo.
Yeah, so I guess there's the option of like trying to double the Flamigo, although I think you're probably just short of being able to pick up a knockout, and you don't want to just ignore a Golden Go. And I guess that's some of the fun of Flamigo, right? Where this does a good job of attracting attention, you know, threatens so much damage, and nearly all the Pokemon of this core between fighting and flying. I think every Pokemon, what Primarina is weak against one of its attacks. Can't say that about too many Pokemon.
No, and it's also interesting to me as well. You have this interplay between the Golden Go and the Annihilate and the Incineroar on the other side of that. If Golden Go is allowed to connect a Shadow Ball to a Ghost-type Annihilate, that would have done a potentially knockout amount of damage, but this time around, Riley will be locking into a Terastallization turn 1 into that Fire typing, so it won't take that super effective damage. We'll be firing off a Rage Fist into the Golden Go, and because it has not taken any hits yet, it is at the lowest possible base power. One hit from close combat is all that's needed to pick up the KO on the opposing Incineroar, though, and I think that's a great trade for Toler. Riley, interestingly enough, not opting to go for Fake Out, and Golden Go going to start things off slower, avoiding targeting that Annihilate to boost Rage Fist and instead boosting its own stats with a Nasty Plot.
Yeah, it's a critical way of how you play against Annihilate, right? You can't just whittle it down most of the time. You got to be careful about how you deal with it. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good first turn for Toler. You know, there's an option now for Riley where if you have something like the Whimsicott, he can get speed control or whatever, but actually taking advantage of that would be pretty tricky. You know, you didn't break the Focus Sash on this Flamigo, who's again looking very threatening and probably at a point now where it could potentially knock out either of these Pokemon. In order to try to prevent that, now there's the threat of yet another Fake Out here, but it's still got like position to actually deal with the Flamigo at some point. At least one of the nice things about Rillaboom is that even though, you know, it does not want to take another attack from the Flamigo and get chunked by Brave Bird, at least even if like it was were to like protect a Fake Out, at least you still have Grassy Glide to get the Focus Sash. But Riley's gonna have to make some moves now. He's at an early deficit.
For sure. Golden Go will take this opportunity to Terastallize into a Dragon type. Will no longer be taking super effective damage from Rage Fist, and given how much damage it took previously, it would most likely take another hit. But whoa, here we go. Riley using the priority of his own attack to boost Rage Fist's power, and that boost makes it enough to pick up the KO on Golden Go. Had he doubled into Golden Go with the Grassy Glide, I don't think that would have been enough damage.
Yeah, 4 more damage that way. Does everything he can to reduce the damage of his self-hit. Not going to be able to do anything to reduce the damage of that Brave Bird, allowing Flamigo to pick out its second one-hit KO of the battle. But a clever little move there, right? You know, we talked about Beat Up as a means of increasing Annihilate's damage, but you can do that with any move, you know, not taking really any meaningful damage from the resisted Grassy Glide. And quickly, Riley is down to 2 Pokemon, but he does have Annihilate slowly scaling its Rage Fist at least.
With Golden Go as your last Pokemon as well, you have some opportunity here to allow that Annihilate to scale. Flamigo, you have to be careful because Flamigo with Scrappy can hit that Golden Go super effectively, and given the presence of Porygon 2, you have to assume that Trick Room is a very tempting option for Toler here.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting spot though, right? Porygon, after Terastallization, has committed sort of a not great final Pokemon to have perhaps against the Annihilate because you can Drain Punch it to get your HP back. And Golden Go going to protect itself, allowing it bulk up now as the Annihilate continues to try to scale.
Again, Riley taking advantage of these passive turns, recognizing that Golden Go is the more tempting target for that Flamigo with a close combat. Porygon 2 ending the turn with Trick Room. The biggest question I have at this point in time is Annihilate is at +1 defense. It has Rage Boost boosted already because it's taken a couple of hits. It has that attack boost as well, and it's at full health. I'm very curious how Toler tries to navigate through this, and if there's a way he has a one-hit knockout on that Pokemon.
Yeah, it can be a tricky spot now, and now that Golden goes in the Trick Room, perhaps be able to be safe from Flamigo for a single turn. It's broken its own Focus Sash by using Brave Bird, and while that knockout was very valuable, it's sort of one of the key Pokemon perhaps that could help deal with this Annihilate. We'll have to see what Toler's final Pokemon is, but maybe Annihilate will be able to handle this one kind of on its own.
It's going to be close for sure. Porygon 2 will try and start chipping away at that Annihilate with a Terra Blast, but every single hit you make with Annihilate means it's going to get even stronger. Make It Rain is enough to pick up the KO on the opposing Flamigo, and Golden Go was slower than Flamigo in Trick Room. Drain Punch will connect with that Porygon 2, pick up the KO, and I think most importantly of all, provide Annihilate with a lot of health recovery, especially after the grassy terrain in between turns. It's going to be basically at full health.
Yeah, as an Annihilate been on here the whole battle, but things are looking okay, right? Had that early deficit looked like Riley might get Flamingo, but instead we just see the Ursaluna coming out, and okay, well it's a perfect final Pokemon, right? Still a whole bunch of Trick Room turns left. The Ursaluna not yet burned, but does have the type advantage. We see Toler helpfully hovering the Trick Room for us. There's 3 turns remaining, so perhaps enough time to get burned and then to smack both of these ground weak Pokemon.
It is a tough position to be in, though, because without the Terastallization, you do have to worry about taking a Drain Punch from the Annihilate. Obviously, Annihilate can hit you either way with super effective damage, and I guess it is fortunate for Toler that because it's still a normal type Ursaluna, Rage Fist will not do any damage there. But with 2-on-1 in this situation, and without the Guts already being active, going on the offensive here is certainly a call, and it looks like, given Headlong Rush was able to pick up the KO on the Annihilate in that one hit, could be a call that pays off for Toler.
Yeah, going for the Headlong Rush, it does no Earthquake, but because it's not burned, needs that extra damage. Make sure it takes care of that Annihilate. And the Golden Go going for the nasty plot, perhaps predicting that the Ursaluna would go for a Protect to activate its Flame Orb instead. Really getting burned there, because now the Ursaluna will literally get burned and have 2 turns to try to knock out this Golden Go. Assume the only out for Riley now is you Protect twice. You hope you get the double Protect, because if you don't, Ursaluna easily going to pick up this knockout on the final turn of Trick Room.
The benefit of going for Headlong Rush for Riley is that the special defense of that Ursaluna was dropped one stage as well. So given all the boosts and dropped in play right now, this Golden Go does have a decent shot of landing a Make It Rain for a one-hit KO. But the big question here, like you just said, Scott, is can you get the double Protect? Can you power through Trick Room? And can Golden Go attack first? Yeah,
you'd assume both Pokemon able to easily knock one another out. So Ursaluna going to be much slower in Trick Room. We'll have to see what happens. Riley's going to cross its fingers, and the double Protect does not succeed.
It's a 1 in 3 chance, and unfortunately for Riley, did not come through this time around. Another Headlong Rush is more than enough damage to pick up the one-hit knockout on the opposing Golden Go, and Toler is 1 win away from moving on to top 8 of this competition in Baltimore. But Riley, certainly a player who knows how to adjust, especially when put on the back foot.
Yeah, exciting first game there. It comes down to a very easy to math out percentage there. Both players pretty good shot of winning that first game on the final turn, but Toler able to pull it out after pulling an early advantage with the Flamigo.
Exactly, and going into game number 2, you have to assume Riley will account for that Flamigo a little bit better in his approach. I mean, if we go back to the replay from that game number 1, leading the Flamigo, having that instant pressure, no fake out onto that Pokemon to flinch it, as it just wasn't really worth it at that point in time, really made it difficult for him to navigate.
Yeah, although you got to keep in mind too, it was just that close where, I think you're Annihilate protecting instead of trying to attack on that turn of Trick Room that Ursaluna first came out away from winning the game probably. So Toler hits the read that really matters there, and then also avoids falling into the double protect. A really exciting game here where 2 of the best trainers in the region showing why.
Yeah, and as this replay goes through as well, listen closely, y'all, because we actually are going to hear the players themselves as they react to one of the final turns of this game. All right, give it one more second, y'all. I promise it's coming. But the other thing that was great, here we go. Good game, very well played. I mean, these are two trainers who know just what that end game was, and you know, it was a role at the end of the day. And I think one of the great things about Pokemon, especially when you're playing at this high of a level, is that you can recognize when they are those roles and just appreciate them for what they are.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it's it's the right move, right? Where
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the thing with sometimes, you know, it's a probability management game, right? You'd love to just make awesome reads and just pick up an easy knockout and you know, win decisively. But when you get to this point of the tournament, you know, the margins are always going to be thin. Both trainers kind of realizing the right way to close the game out there, where Rally got his spot where, hey, you know, as soon as I lost the Annihilate, the best I can do is try to get out of Trick Room, and he almost made it there. But we see as the trainers get into this game, there's a more similar strategy from Toler, and on the other side of the field, Riley happening to use that Whimsicott that we were talking about so much in the pregame.
I was going to say, we saw Riley try and set up the Annihilate in game number 1 with a Grassy Glide from his own Rillaboom. I think an easy adjustment to make in game number 2 is you just threaten a huge amount of damage right off the bat. As long as you still have 4 Pokemon in your party, Beat Up will hit once per each Pokemon that has not fainted. So that is a huge jump in base power potential from Riley this turn. Toler has to respond.
Yeah, sort of a tricky situation, too, where, you know, one of the weaknesses of it is it doesn't only attack a single target. There are 2 Pokemon potentially threatening a lot of damage on Toler's side of the field. So, you know, do you read that? You just get to protect Tailwind maybe on the other side of the field, and it's all for nothing. A lot of different things could happen here, so sort of a tricky turn to play out. Toler being a little defensive here, getting the Porygon 2 in order to try and get the Trick Room up and avoid any potential Tailwind shenanigans.
Moonblast is the move of choice from this Whimsicott, bringing the Flamigo down to its Focus Sash. Whimsicott has a surprising amount of special attack at the end of the day, and while it is not enough to, you know, prevent damage going down on this Annihilate from a close combat from this scrappy Flamigo, it is going to be enough to ensure that another attack from either of Riley's 2 Pokemon is enough to remove it from the field, and Rage Fist is going to be the attack of choice to pick up that KO.
No knockouts for Flamigo this time. Riley's saying enough of that. You know, I can't just allow this one Pokemon to run over my team, and that winds up being a pretty decent trade for him. Now, end up the situation where Ursaluna gets to come out in the field. Certainly clear what Toler would like to do here, right? With one of the slowest Pokemon in the game and a Pokemon that knows Trick Room. So now it is up to the Annihilate and the Whimsicott to try to stop that, right? Well, you know, you could use Beat Up to power up the Rage Fist, but the Rage Fist isn't going to do anything to Porygon, who could still easily Trick Room in front of that, and then perhaps try to help Ursaluna take out the Annihilate inside Trick Room before it's able to use a powerful Rage Fist on anything or to Drain Punch the more critical Ursaluna.
It's a tough spot for sure, and I think to Toler's benefit, I mean, we saw how impactful Trick Room was in game number 1 for him, and in game number 2, because Annihilate hasn't gotten that bulk up in yet, there really is no opportunity for it to deal damage to the Porygon to stop a Trick Room.
This is an incredibly bold play by Toler there. I don't know if you saw when he locked in, but
no, I was waiting.
Yeah, they kind of realize that Rally knows that he needs to play this conservatively, and instead not playing it conservatively at all. Protect,
right.
What's that? Don't know her.
Well, I'm not sure what Protect is. Just kidding, I do know. But Drain Punch will not be stopped by a Protect. We'll be doing some damage into the opposing Ursaluna, earthquaking your own Porygon 2. Not a bad decision at the end of the day for Toler, as it doesn't do much damage to the Porygon 2, but does do a decent chunk to a now Incineroar and still that Annihilate on Riley's side of the field.
A fun little play there, right? Where maybe it doesn't matter a whole lot that it took that extra damage. So instead, chipping Incineroar enough that another Earthquake later in the game, even if Intimidated, will probably pick up a knockout. Get a little more damage of an Annihilate. Rage Fist doesn't really matter here, since 2 of the Pokemon on his team are immune to it anyway, and the other one is going to get knocked out if it gets caught by it either way. So hey, you know, why not? Bold play, but you know, never know when a little bit of damage is going to make all the difference, especially because in this matchup, you know, Toler's going to get 1 Trick Room almost for sure. Got to make the most of it.
Riley has to find his way through the next Trick Room turns, and admittedly, I think one thing players will do in this position is they will use Fake Out, they will use Protect as a way to sort of buy some time. Given that Riley has Fake Out available to him, I think the prediction that Toler makes here is, okay, you're going to Fake Out, maybe potentially even attack my Ursaluna, which is exactly why I send in the Golden Go, who's not going to be taking damage from a fighting type attack from that Annihilate. Riley goes for the terrestrialization here onto the Incineroar, going to be turning into a ghost-type Pokemon so that it doesn't take any damage from the, guess what, the normal-type Terra Blast on this Porygon 2. So both of these trainers know their type charts and using it to their advantage to dodge almost any damage this turn. The Annihilate picking the correct target in that Porygon 2 with Drain Punch.
Yeah, I think this is way advantage Riley. Not only is Annihilate get even healthier, but really the end game here, if you're Riley, you really just need to stall this Trick Room, right? You still have all your Pokemon remaining. You need to get through this safely, and I think Incineroar getting that terrestrialization is actually a big deal. Dodging the Terra Blast is great, but I think what's really critical is now if Incineroar leaves battle, since it's no longer weak against that Earthquake, it could potentially switch back in even after the Guts boost and maybe survive it because it's flipped the type chart and get that one more Intimidate off, but fake out again, at which point you've almost certainly survived that Trick Room. On the flip side, you know, now that Golden Go is out there threatening all this damage, it is weak against both of these Pokemon, but maybe it creates an opportunity where Porygon could go for a recover and try to get himself healthy enough to use Trick Room again later.
Really trying to get healthy enough to use Trick Room later is Toler's only option here, as you know, Terra Blast cannot do any damage anymore, and while we see it go for an Ice Beam into this Incineroar, actually that Ice Beam did a decent chunk of damage and would be a 2-hit knockout on the Incineroar at this point in time. We see one Pokemon target down the Golden Go on Riley's side of the field, and I believe that was that Incineroar.
Yeah, not a bad little trait there for Toler. You know, I mean, again, you're losing Trick Room turns. Not like a huge amount of damage, but it does certainly get Incineroar weak enough that if it switches into almost any attack, it'll be knocked out now, which makes it a little bit easier. The threat of a second fake out is pretty low, and now maybe you have Golden Go potentially pinning Annihilate, pending the Pokemon speeds. You have Porygon pinning the Incineroar, and hey, maybe you're getting somewhere.
I also feel like since Porygon 2 is it's the slowest Pokemon on the field, but it's the fastest Pokemon in the Trick Room world, knowing that you are going to be moving first, it does mean you can put off using this recover for a couple more turns and just save it for when you actually need it to ensure that Porygon 2 will remain healthy enough again for a potential Trick Room later. We see Riley switch out the Incineroar and reveal that Rillaboom is his final choice for this match, and actually this is going to be a double switch, so the Rillaboom and the Whimsicott will be out on the field side by side with each other. Ice Beam from that Porygon 2 finds a better target into the opposing Rillaboom. Shadow Ball from the Golden Go will connect with the opposing Whimsicott, leaving it down in the red.
Hey, again, another turn where it's not the worst thing in the world for Riley, right? You have to give up some resources. That's sort of the nature of Trick Room, but Porygon still not able to use a fake out, sort of forced, I think I recover, sort of forced to keep attacking an event. Incineroar slot does get a nice bit of damage in the Rillaboom, but you know, Toler really couldn't make a read there, right? You know, even if he wanted to, it would have been so dangerous if just, you know, Riley just stayed in. He would have instantly lost the game if his Pokemon get attacked. Instead, kind of having to play this out, and, you know, we're almost through the Trick Room now without anything really having happened.
You say without anything really have happened, but I do wonder if Porygon 2 has taken enough damage overall to prevent more Trick Room from happening, which would be the best possible outcome for Riley. Yeah,
I mean, I think, to me, you probably sacrifice Rillaboom here in order to continue stopping that recover, and then you get in a situation where once the Trick Room expires, you're actually looking pretty good.
Well, with a fake out onto the opposing Porygon 2, Shadow Ball will be the only attack to target this Assault Vest Rillaboom on Riley's side of the field, and that alone is not enough damage to pick up that KO. So here we are. There's going to be a little bit more recovery on the field from these Pokemon, but with the Trick Room turns winding down, Riley has found an out to keep his speed on his side and stop the Porygon 2. With so much damage, you have to assume Woodhammer should be enough to pick up the KO, especially with a little chip from Moonblast.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to be pretty happy when your opponent gets Trick Room up and it expires and you still have all 4 Pokemon remaining.
Yeah.
That will likely not be true after this turn, where potentially Golden Go threatening a knockout on both of these Pokemon, but you know, there's a world where, hey, maybe you pick up a knockout on Porygon and get a Tailwind for your final Pokemon. Hope you can close out the game out in that 2v2.
Toler has to find a way to get Trick Room back on the field so that the Ursaluna in the back of his party will have a way to victory. Tailwind first from this Whimsicott will be setting things up for the Pokemon in the back of Riley's party, and here comes that Woodhammer onto the Porygon 2. It falls short of the knockout. Make It Rain from Golden Go will knock out both Rillaboom and Whimsicott, and Porygon 2, hanging on with just a sliver of health, has found an opportunity to twist the dimensions once more. And honestly, with the Tailwind set up now, that's even better for Toler.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd be moving first anyway, but we'll potentially really be moving first, assuming it is the Trick Room we see, and there it goes. Porygon just barely surviving. Rally betrayed by his own grassy terrain, healing up the Porygon just enough that it was able to survive and use that Trick Room. Now that Ursaluna looning in the back is looking awfully scary.
The Annihilate and the Incineroar will be returning to the field for Riley, and while they are still relatively healthy, while this Incineroar will have the opportunity to at least flinch the Porygon 2 this turn, there's only so much Riley can do in this position.
Yeah, I mean, because we've seen before, you know, either of these Pokemon can now attack the Incineroar slot. It does not have Protect. Pick up a knockout there, and it's Annihilate versus the world with an awful lot of Trick Room turns to try to survive. Really great spot now for Toler. Porygon surviving that Woodhammer was just huge, and it looks like he could be very close to moving on to the top 8 of this first regional of the season.
With Ursaluna in the back for Toler, we've seen how much Headlong Rush does into the opposing Annihilate when it has Terrastalized. It hasn't Terrastalized yet, but on the other hand, there wasn't Guts in play that previous time either. There's no more options for an Intimidate onto that Pokemon. So even though there are 2 special attackers on the field right now for Riley, and even though one of those special attackers is only going to be attacking this turn, Toler correctly picks the target of that Incineroar to connect a Shadow Ball with for the knockout. It is just Annihilate standing in the way of Toler from making top 8 in the first regional of the season.
Yeah, no, it's kind of been the hero of its set. You know, it almost was able to knock out all the Pokemon Toler's side of the field last game. Gonna be a little trickier this time. I was a little surprised to see the Protect there. I felt like Ian, you know, removing Incineroar was sort of the safest path forward, but hey, you know, that's one turn of Trick Room down. Maybe somehow Annihilate can find a way.
You know, I know Baltimore is the city of believing, but it looks like Toler has found a way to make it into top 8 of this competition, beating Riley Factura, another previous regional champion along the way. Congratulations to both of these trainers, as that was an incredibly well-played set. And, you know, Toler, I think one of the people who first believed in the Flamigo in particular, and just paying off incredibly well for him in his tournament run.
Yeah, Flamigo was great in that set, right? I mean, you see more directly contributing that first game, picking up a couple of big knockouts, but I feel like even in the second game, sometimes it's fine, you know, if a Pokemon doesn't pick up a bunch of knockouts, because it forces how your opponent plays the game to be not quite optimal for their strategy, you know, having to target it down at the beginning of the game. Got Toler in really good position to get that first Trick Room up, do just enough damage, and then just barely get Porygon 2 in a position where it was able to survive the Woodhammer. It's so low HP, you kind of wonder, like, oh, is that one of those attacks where, like, depending on the roll, it could have knocked it out, it could not have knocked it out. Either way, this time it did survive, allowing Toler to pick up that decisive 2-0 victory.
There was also, I mean, just remember how much damage was on the board, I think, for both these trainers. At the beginning of game number 2, we saw that Flamigo go down immediately, but that bought time for that Porygon 2. Also, Ice Beam into the Ghost-type Incineroar honestly did a lot more than I expected. Going into this tournament, I think a lot of trainers anticipated the form of Trick Room to be that Psy-Spam, Expanding Force, Psychic Terrain variant that we've seen pop up time and time again since the Sword and Shield era, but Toler and these other Flamigo players have really showcased that Ursaluna and Porygon 2 alone are enough to make the Twisted Dimensions very worthwhile.
Yeah, so I might disagree with you if that's what players were expecting, but I do think it's a great point to bring up, right? Because, yeah, I mean, maybe if you're playing in like that best of 1 global challenge or something, the Psy-Spam version of the team is a little bit scarier, but to me, this is what you want to bring to a tournament like this if you want to get a bunch of championship points. I think it's a little more of a mature team. You know, you can play the game a little differently. The team doesn't fall apart so easily when something goes wrong. You know, we'd seen Tyranitar mostly in that Flamigo spot, right? I think, and these guys kind of innovated that archetype by using Flamigo instead, and we've seen that pay dividends. I feel like every time Flamigo's been on stream, it's been pretty scary looking. But I think this core is just great. You know, all the Pokemon are a little bulkier. There's some ways to win if you don't get Trick Room active, where you know, see Flamigo tear through the team, but also, you know, Golden Go itself, you know, you got the option of kind of just having something like Incineroar and Amoonguss beside it, supporting it, allowing it to really be attacked. I think this is just a better way to run that strategy, but that strategy is strong. You know, Trick Room is powerful. There are tons of Tailwind teams in the field, and abusing it by just going under with the Trick Room, proving to be a powerful strategy once again.
Yeah, I mean, I've always believed in Trick Room, so it's just what flavor of Trick Room is the flavor of the week. And I just, again, love the creativity here. I think that there's also some really cool play between the Amoonguss and the Golden Go with Nasty Plot. I mean, we saw Nasty Plot really do work for those Calyrex Shadow Rider players in Regulation G, where there were players who would just go for Nasty Plot, and then all of a sudden you had a +4 special attack, scary Pokemon on the field that you had to contend with. And the thing that jumps out to me about this team is that, yes, you have the potential for that with Golden Go. You have the potential for scary attack powers from the Ursaluna. There's just so much damage potential here. Being able to anticipate what your opponent's going to pick is really the first step. And I think an experienced player like Toler can look at the team preview and use that knowledge and that experience to his advantage when it comes to how he crafts his own game plan.
Yeah, I think in that regard, one thing that was interesting to me about this too, and kind of comparing this version of the team to some other similar versions we've seen, is that third move slot on Ursaluna. Earthquake's actually kind of the classic choice, where he's one of the few players who have stuck with it, and we kind of saw it pay dividends in that match, where Earthquake provided some valuable chip, which allowed some later knockouts, sort of force the terrestrialization from the Incineroar, even though it wasn't like super packed, but it's like a double KO or anything. It was just the right amount of damage. Inversely, boy, would it have been kind of funny if Porygon had been knocked out later, and part of the reason why would have been the attack from the ally Ursaluna. But he mathed it out. He knew exactly how many grassy terrain turns he was going to get, even though he hadn't seen Rillaboom yet. He saw the future.
He saw the future. Future Sight is a psychic type attack, so maybe he is a Psy Spam player.
The spirit of Psy Spam is protecting him, yeah.
But that's enough from us. Let's hear from Toler Webb himself as he moves on to top 8 of this competition. Do we please take it away?
Thanks so much, Gabby. Thank you so much, Scott. I am joined in the lounge with Toler Webb. Toler, how are you feeling right now? You are our first quarterfinalist to make it into the top 8. Tell me about it.
I was so sure after yesterday that, I just had a very middling run yesterday. I had a lot of losses that felt really my fault. I just wasn't playing at my peak, so I've been really pleased to be able to get these 4 wins in a row today, and I guess I can't ask for more than I've had so far.
I remember leaving the venue with the rest of the casters, and we ran into you, and we were like, hey, how are you feeling about day 2? And you're like, I think I'm going to lose everything, and look at you now. You've won so many in a row. You're geared up to play for top 4 right now in your next match. Can you tell us a little bit about going into this matchup? You had mentioned earlier that, this is the 4th Annihilate team that you faced off against.
Fifth, yeah.
Fifth Annihilate team that you faced off against. Tell us about your thoughts on this matchup between your team and the Annihilate teams.
Yeah, so Annihilate is freaky for Porygon 2 and Ursaluna, right? Because our big coverage moves, I'm Terra Normal Ursaluna. Our big coverage moves are Facade and Terra Blast, or Terra Fighting Terra Blast. Either way, we can't hit the Annihilate with our core plan. But I think once you get to high-level Pokemon, the way that you play isn't defined by how you execute your core plan. It's defined by how you execute your counterplay. And the vast majority of games you play in day 2 and onward, even late in Swiss day 1, you don't actually get to do the thing you want to do, which is set TR and click Terra Normal Facade.
Yeah.
You usually have to do whatever your alternate thing is, so you end up doing your backup plan as your plan A most of the time.
Gotcha, and it seems like it's paying off really well. This is the 5th Annihilate team that you face off against. Riley's a very strong player, and then you're able to overcome that. Can you tell us a little bit more about your team? You have that Flamigo. It's a team that's very similar to what Chris Hahn is running, I believe, right?
Yeah, Chris Hahn took it from us.
Gotcha. So can you tell us a little...
He was also working on it simultaneously.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that Flamigo, that option and that choice?
Yeah, so this is Yotam Cohen's team. This is his baby. I'm just borrowing it for the weekend. He was working with Porygon 2, Ursaluna, Amoonguss, Incin, and Dango for a while. Actually, he loves Porygon 2 and Ursaluna. He actually built the original draft of the team that won EUIC last year. That ended up getting played at a Swedish local, and then Nils took it from the Swedish local and modified it a little bit, won a UIC. So Yotam is tried and true Porygon 2 Ursaluna lover. So he's really amazing at coming up with how these teams work. The only thing I added on, we were talking about trying to cover 3 different matchups simultaneously, which was Rain, it was Mouse Ape, and I'm trying to remember the last one, Psy Spam. So hard TR Psy Spam. And it was really hard to find Pokemon that would do all 3. He had Dragapult there, which was really good into Mouse Ape, but kind of middling into Rain and useless into Psy Spam. But what Flamigo does is it actually handles a lot of our fringe matchups in that way. So against Mouse Ape, right, we can close combat the mouse and it's down. If people aren't running max speed Jolly Annihilate, it can Brave Bird that. Of course, everyone is.
Right.
So I have not run into an Annihilate that's been slower than my Goldango all weekend. So no really slow, bulky ones. But it's really good into Mouse Ape. It's good into Rain. You can CC the Archelodon. And we found out when we started using it that actually it's good into everything.
Yeah.
Because it's Urshifu Light. You can you never get intimidated, so it's kind of like critting everything.
Yeah.
You don't hit through Protect, but you do hit through Ghost types. So Flamigo is just kind of doing an Urshifu impression while being immune to Earthquake and giving us wide guard access for Typhlosion and expanding Force. It's really it's pulling a lot of weight.
That sounds like a choice, and I'm so happy to see so many Flamigos make it through. Toler, last year you won the Knoxville Regional Championships. What would it mean to you if you won this regional championship, the first regional of 2025?
I would be shocked. I mean, like, again, this isn't my team. I thought I was playing really well at Worlds this year. I ran into some misfortune in day 2 paired with some poor play on my end in that game 1 round 9 then when I was playing in day 2, and I really felt like I was playing at a level where I could have gone all the way at that tournament. And we saw a team very like I brought Shiliang Tong's team with the Ogrepon and Scarflanderus. We saw a team very like that making finals. So it's nice to have that little bit of redemption to get this far, and you know, I'll try to be satisfied no matter what happens, but if I could win right away, that would, I guess I could finish my PhD a little sooner. That might be nice.
That'd be pretty nice to be able to just qualify for Worlds and not have to worry about it for the rest of the season.
Just work overtime a little bit, yeah.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you prepare for your next match, your top 8 match. Toler, before I let you go, though, any shout-outs to the crowd?
As always, shout out my mom. Shout out my beautiful girlfriend, Casey, who's watching from home. Yeah, without my mom, I wouldn't be here. Without Casey, I really wouldn't be here. Without Yotam, I definitely wouldn't be here because this is his team, his work. He's hosting me this weekend. We've been hanging out all weekend. He had a disappointing run yesterday, so I can only hope that one of me or Chris, we both work with Yotam, so one of me or Chris can take the team all the way and then do him proud. I figure the next best thing, sometimes not, but the next best thing to winning yourself is seeing a friend win with what you worked on. So try to give him that.
That is absolutely true. Toler, it's always such a pleasure to get to talk to you. Thank you so much for your insights onto this team, into the matchup. Best of luck in the rest of Top Cut. We're gonna go ahead and take a break, but when we come back, more Top Cut action here at Baltimore.